Hi everybody, I'm Boris. I'm from Brussels. I work in a company, Trusted Family, and we do mainly it's a big Ruby on Rails app. But we try to convert most step by step our new features and old features to Ember apps too. So I'll walk through a very basic introduction to Ember, and I will follow up with some tips or situation that you might encounter integrating it in the Rails app, and also some great things that you can achieve using a Rails app that you can't if you just run a simple Ember app. And also some quirks, and maybe share with you some of their problems that we have encountered or that we are trying to fix, and maybe see if you have any suggestion or just check some experience. So, what's Ember? I don't know how many of you have ever touched Ember code here, or a bit? Quite a bit, so it's cool. So for you, it's going to be very basic. Sorry, guys. um, so Ember is basically a JavaScript framework that's designed to help developers build their ambitious large web applications, but the special standards that are competitive with native apps. So it's really focused on their performance, and I would not say lightweight, but at least there are some ways to optimize to try to get through the difference of performance that you can get with the native apps, and it's certainly easier to maintain as you don't have to build many apps for your different devices. So that's definitely some great things that is going on with Ember. There are certainly other frameworks, but I will mainly talk about Ember today. Um, so what are the core concepts? So Ember, I mean, CSS is just and GS and just implementation detail about the web. So what's the truly characteristic of a web app? And I think we can all agree that it's actually shareable and bookmarkable URLs, because you can then share that URLs and people can find your content through that, and it's easy to share, and it's harder to do with a native app. So the big difference with other MVC frameworks that are built on JavaScript is that with Ember, it's the core. I mean, the core of Ember is based around that idea of URLs, and it's really important for. I mean, you always start with the route in the Ember app because everything is built around it. That's how you define your models, your different routes and stuff like that. So, sorry, I missed some steps. um, what's the main difference with other frameworks? Um, so let's start with Angular. I guess many of you have also seen that. What's the good? That it does have data bindings. It extends HTML tags with features, so it's like a progressive approach somehow. There's not much setup required, and for sure it has a bigger community than Ember. Sadly, would like to see that grow a bit in Brussels, especially in Brussels. And there's an Ember meetup, by the way. The bad thing is that there are many ways to do things. Not so much big practices, and then your code can get messy very fast. And maybe now, but last time I checked, there were no auto cleanup of dummy events for non-Angular code, for example. Backbone, that's the good old, that was kind of the first MVC framework that went out there, I think. So that indeed there is not much setup. It's very lightweight, no much setup, easy learning curve. But the bad is that there's a lot of things to build at first to make your app do some stuff. So for large application, it's not that handy because, I mean, you have to, like, there's a lot of things that are built in Ember that you don't have to do with their backbone, which is nice. And there are no data bindings from the start. So yeah, it's kind of tedious to build a backbone app, I would say. And also, like, if you want to get towards the Ember style app with backbone, you have to use a lot of like third-party plugins that extends the backbone to give you different capabilities and stuff like that. So Ember, so what as I said, there's no boilerplates. Like most of the nice feature that you would expect from a application framework is built in already. The code style is similar to Rails. Like it's more than MVC, I would say, but still you will find some similarities between the two codes. And it's definitely convention of a configuration, which is great for JavaScript coders because, you know, like if you you have a tendency to get messy in JavaScript, and here it gives you a code structure with, like there's, I would not say there's just one way to build things, but at least there are some best practices that can follow, and then your code gets very nice structure, and it's very easy to develop with you, with your fellow developers, and it's very easy to find your way in an Ember app, I would say. Bad stuff is that indeed there is a big learning curve. It's, as there is a lot of stuff happening in the background, like a lot of magic, like in Rails, but you should be used to that, I guess. Yeah, it's a bit hard to get into, especially at the beginning when it went out. There were not a lot of documentation, so you really had to go through the code and see what. Hopefully, it was well documented. So also, it's I would say a medium-sized lib compared to Backbone, for example. So it might not be a best fit for a mobile app at first, unless you do some optimization. But I think we all know how to do that. So eventually, it's not that much of a problem, actually. So what are the Ember parts? So as I said, you always start with the router. And what does the router? It translates URL into a series of nested templates. And so each route is always at least, that's how you should do it. At least each route is, hello, should be associated with the model. As the template would render the models that are there. But you can also build static pages with Ember. It's no problem. It's very easy to do. And what that means that, as I was saying before, each URL should be shareable, and then you can initialize the app from a URL, and that will automatically query for the right models and stuff like that. Because it uses name conventions, and so sometimes you just need to write, for example, one route, and then if your code uses the standard, I would say, name convention for Ember, it will automatically generate other files like the controllers, the views, and stuff like that. So unless you need to override them, it's going to generate it for you. So you end up with a lot less code until your app starts to scale and you start adding behavior to the app. So that's quite practical. So the models are that. It's a bit like in Rails. So that's where you define all the attributes of your model, so your data structure. Yeah, so it's a nice way to, I would say, bring structure into your the front end code, so that you don't need to do always like the get JSON and all that stuff. So it already knows what to query, for example. So the view, that's usually used to handle like DOM events, I would say. So the template, it's what it's equivalent of the Rails view, I would say. And then if you need to, for example, initialize or third-party pluggings or handle click events or different actions, like you would say you would like to, click, for example, to click on that thing, and then that needs to happen. You can send, from there, you can send actions to the controller or the routes to perform other, for example, to perform queries or stuff like that. But there's the view who handles everything that's supposed to happen from the DOM or in the DOM. The route, it's basically what tells it provides the model to the controller. Basically, that's where you're going to do your finding, for example, the queries. So you can also do, for example, like your side loadings of other queries, and then you can set up your controller so that it has the correct data in it. So a controller is basically not like in Rails, it's more of a state. That's where you keep the state of your application. So for example, you can handle, for example, events from in the view that would set states on the controller, and then it would keep that state over. You can also set up properties in that controller that are not necessarily associated with the model, so that's kind of handy. Templates, I guess you all know, it's usually handlebar templates by default. Yeah, and that's like the Rails view. And so that one of the nice things about Ember is that you can set up components, and the components are based on the HTML5 component specification. So right now it's still not like the native one, but it's planned that in the future it will render HTML5 components that will be directly rendered in the browser. So that's kind of cool that they already know what they want to go towards. And if you use these components, then you can like really extract different parts of your application and reuse them. Yeah, throughout multiple apps even. You can it's really handy to dry up the code, I would say. And it's supposed to be agnostic from the data. I mean, for example, the data you pass in. So I can maybe show you one example. For example, in the here I have a simple post, like a blog post thing, and you would have, for example, a link to that will link to the post, and then to render the title and the thumb that, for example, you want to render vignettes, for example, and depending on if there is a thumbnail or not, you want different behavior. So here you just specify a resource header component, and you just pass in the data that you want. And so after that, you can go inside the templates, and here it's just like, I would say like a raised partial, except that it's a bit more encapsulated. And the raised partial doesn't have its own behavior. So from here, it will automatically associate it with a kind of a controller, but just for the component. For example, here, that's how it looks. So you have the resource header component, and for example, you can specify the tag name, the class name, and it can handle the click. Like you have built-in events that are associated with components, but you can also handle specific actions, for example, doing this, and then, yeah, whatever function names you want, for example, handle that. And then you would have directly access to the DOM text, and from there you can do whatever you want, but it's supposed to stay agnostic. You could, in theory, pass the whole model in it and access all the properties of it, but then it kind of defeats the purpose of their being really encapsulated, I would say. So one of the other nice things about Ember is that it runs an Ember loop. It's kind of a queue action where each time there's something that's rendered or that you perform an action or something like that, it runs a loop, and then you have different, I would say, time when you can actually perform different actions. For example, you have this, it goes through all these ones that are listed, so the sync, the actions, routed transition. So each time you transition to a new route, you can access that specific moment when it does that. And then, for example, if you want to execute third-party stuff to the DOM, you will usually start a new loop, for example, and then wait until the template has rendered, and then you are sure that that's rendered into the DOM. Because sometimes that's what happens is that you initialize the third-party plugin, but the template is not yet rendered or something like that. So here it automatically waits until that is rendered into the DOM. Or that, for example, the template has been destroyed. For example, when you transition to a new route, there's a callback when the template got destroyed, and then you can perform some actions there into that loop. And every single action that you execute is always run through that queue, actually. So when it's useful, indeed, so it just callbacks, the manipulation, sockets, callbacks, timeouts, well, and you see all that list there. So I guess you've heard about Ember Data too. It's really like built aside Rails as a separate project, but it's not yet in V1 now. So Ember Data, right now they focus more on Ember Data, but it's not even the same team that works on it. But what you have in Rails is that you have an active record, right? So it was built for separation of persistent logic. So you can also switch from one DB to another, something like that. But since Rails is like a object-oriented way of doing things, you also want an object-oriented way of managing your data within your front-end apps. So that you also don't have to write manually all the get JSON and stuff like that. You would like something like active record, but on the browser, for example. And also like dealing with data in the browser is often hard because you can face a lot of different APIs, depending on what you use. And every time someone builds an API, they build a little bit differently. For example, they can have camelized names, a different way to embed relationships, throwing keys, and all that stuff. So also, you want to be able to change the tools, and also you also need to start thinking about offline capabilities, and soon you need to cache user data over local storage or something like that. So you need something that deals with the front-end state of your application. So what problems that Ember Data wants to solve? It's like creating records and saving them, including the relationship. It's easily start an application with fixture data if your server isn't ready yet. So that's more of a development practicality, because even more now, you tend to have separate teams. That one that works on the front end code, one that works on the API, and sometimes the API is not ready yet. So you already want to start thinking about your data structure also, and or at least work with what you have already and start building the front end. But sometimes it's hard when the teams are not synced up or when you have to wait something. So there's something called fixture in Ember data, so that you can pass in like your kind of I would say factory data or something like that, like you want changing the JSON representation of your model without changing the entire code app. So, for example, if it's the structure is something like different than in your Rails app, you can like really shape it the way you want in your front end code without having to change the whole Rails app behind. And you only want to load the model that you have in cache. So if something is already in your store, because when it loads the data, Ember puts that in a store, and then if you go to another page where the data is already there, it's not going to query twice. It's only going to query if you ask it, and it's only if you have like a link to models that have not been loaded yet, then it will load them for you, but it's not going to load the other models, for example. So that's kind of a handy and it's performance nice. You want also to keep the DOM up to date with the model change. So, for example, when you query for a model, you want that your template reflects the model change. Come. So, and also within the Ember app, for example, if you edit a post and then you save it, you don't want to wait until the query comes back so that for the view to reflect the changes you made. So everything is async kind of. And you also want dynamically switching between server and offline cache, but that's more about the future of Ember Data. Also, it's not yet really set up, but it's something they want to think about in the future too. And also, you want to take advantage of awesome new features in browsers like WebSockets and type arrays. The idea behind Ember Data is that they want to have a single source of truth, so that as Rails use conventional reconfiguration, sadly, JSON still doesn't. So you have some things like JSON API that starts to want to implement some new standards, or even the one that Active Model Serializer uses. But right now, the direction Ember Data has taken is to suggest people to write their own adapter for Ember Data. So whatever your backend is, whatever your JSON API is, you will be able to extend the default adapter in Ember to match, so that you can transform the data that you get from any API to your Ember app, and the sync will happen automatically afterwards. So you write adapter and serializer, so that the communication is, I mean, the way the data is transformed and synced is always at one place, so that you don't have to go through your whole app to change how your data is going to be saved. It's always in one place. Yeah, so that's it. So if you decide to change the API, you only have to change the adapter. So Ember and Rails. So that's, I mean, basically the Ember app is integrated. You can use it with the asset pipeline, or you can also use it with our Broccoli GS, but it's really fine. Basically, you integrate I mean, you include all your assets there, and it's usually structured like that. So as I was saying, it looks very much like a Rails app. So inside your JavaScript assets, you have controllers, route models, views, templates, components, and mixins. That's the, I would say, the suggested structure for your Ember app. Of course, that only means that you have one Ember app inside your Rails. If you start having multiple apps, that starts to be a bit more difficult because you have to tell Rails app where to find your templates, and then probably you want to put that in different folders and stuff like that. So you need more assets loading strategies after that, which is something that you have new tools that something like I remember Webpack is doing, for example, that you can load all your assets for your Ember app asynchronously and really specify which Ember app requires what. So, but that's the base structure. So, and I don't. It's not the first use case where you will have multiple Ember apps in one Rails app. I would say usually you have one big app, and that's like your Discourse, for example. I don't know if you heard about Discourse, the forum-based Ember app. So Ember has a default adapter, which match the Rails model serializer structure. So basically, the JSON that's going to come out of your model serializer is going to fit the way the default adapter wants the data back. But it's easy to make your custom adapter. So for example, in our app, we started using JSON API, and so we make our own adapter for it. But most probably there are other stuff that already exists, and you probably can check it out. But I guess the community has to find it as the things. So one nice thing about having an Ember app in a Rails app is that you can do preloading of data, so that you don't have to make the first JSON request, because usually when your Rails app renders the Ember app, it will initialize the Ember app, and then it will make the query to get the first models. So what this course does is that it has a preloader stuff, so that you can, for example, I would show you quickly. So here in the application controller, you have some kind of preloaded methods. It's very basic and can probably optimize, but and then in your post controller here, you just specify store preloaded and output the post. And so after in your application template here, you can just loop everything that's preloaded, and then you will put it in a class here, and then after that you can import it into your Ember app. But I will show you how. So as I said, where you load the data from the route in the most basically in the Ember app. So here, for example, it would the first time you render your Ember app, it will check if there's something in the preload store, and then remove it and automatically return the post that was there, and then assign it to the controller. So that will prevent from making the first request. So yeah, so that was it. Something else, I've sometime now I already. Okay, I will go fast then. So something else about content indexing. So before you had, so that was one main problem about MVC apps, is that the Google could not read the JavaScript. So it basically had no sitemap, and it was just an Ember app, right? So one thing that this course does is that it matched all the Rails routes with Ember routes. And so that at each step, you would be able to use it would render the Ember app under each of the Rails routes. See what I mean? So if you had the post route in your Ember app, you would have a post route in your Rails, and then it would render the app from there. And so in that you would be able to use the no script tag to put content there for the crawlers. But it's a bit of duplication, right? So, but what it allows you is also allows you to use a preloader. So for each raise route, you can preload the data that is necessary for the viewer to just to load that first Ember view. That was kind of cool. But there is recently a post about Google that say that now crawler starts rendering with JavaScript, so that becomes less of a problem. But still, if you want to do the preloader, it's also nice to have that routes matching between the two. Yeah, I was saying some caveats. It's not that easy to use multiple Ember apps in a Rails app because you can only have one Ember app running at the same time. So you need to kill them before you load the second one, and it's not always easy to structure the code so well. And the second thing is that if you want to use turbolinks, imagine you want only a part of your app to use Ember app. It's hard to tell turbolinks that because they both met with the history API. So you can sometimes you want to use their hashtag for your Ember app, but if you want nicer URLs, and if you also want that the Ember app match the Rails routes, then you want to use the history API so that you don't have the hashtag. But then it starts messing with the history API, and then you kind of have to say to Ember that it should only consider these URLs, and same for turbolinks, so that they both can play nicely. But it's not that easy for now. So I don't know if any of you have had experience with that, but it would be great. So that was it. Actually, I'm done. I don't know if you have any questions. No. Yeah. So what? Oh yeah. So the question is, can you use an Ember app on only a few pages of your Rails app? So as I was saying, if you can definitely load custom assets that will load the Ember app from a Rails route, and then it's about how you structure. How you want to set up the URL handling from the Ember app. So you can either use the hashtag or the history location. I would say from that point of view, it's maybe easier to from a certain route in Rails then use the hashtag so that it just starts from there, right? You have a base URL and then your Ember app uses the hashtag to handle the URL. And then you can specify that in Ember to have a root URL to start from. So that's the easiest one for now, at least. Yeah. No, it's manual, but it's not that there's a lot of code either. So, for example, so that's the basic router of the Ember app. So you have for example, the post, which is listed as a resource if it contains a collection. Same for, and then you have nested URLs with the post here, and then oh, and here just have a resource force, right? So it's kind of similar. No. Yeah. No, there's no, yeah, there's duplication now. So but now the Ember guides are getting quite complete. So there are lots of tutorials just to set up Ember with the Rails app, but basically it's just about there's a gem called like Ember Rails, and there is a Bootstrap initialization script that just places all the assets where it needs to be, and then you can just start generating some controllers and routes. And but the Ember guides are now quite complete, so you can just go through there, and that's going to be enough. But there are plenty of tutorials there. So I don't have particular resource because since the Ember community is growing fast still, you might want some. It's easy to find outdated posts on Stack Overflow or the blog post. So that's one of the hard things that I said at the beginning is that you have to keep up to date and see what's still up to date or dated. But yeah, that's I guess that's going to get better over the years. Well, I guess it depends how much resource you have and budget. if you can if you can spend 6 months or just redoing the entire thing, then I would guess start from scratch is good. But otherwise, like us, we do step by step. But it's a little bit harder because you have to deprecate code and like feature flags or something like that. Or what you can do is also or just create a new namespace and start building and just step by step changing your routes so that it uses the new Ember apps and stuff. Not so long, but yeah. Yeah. No, the thing is that it's always easier to just do HTML. So, I mean, if you want the fast stuff, just do pure HTML as DHA suggested. After that, it's more about also, like he does a lot of like caching and fragment caching, but that's the hardest thing in programming. So if you don't want to deal with that specifically and you still want to get performance, I think like front-end apps are a good way to go. But again, it's a matter of also the different kind of resource you have. If you have more Rails developers or more JavaScript developers, you see that one might be more comfortable working with that. But both are kind of equivalent. And if you see like how DHAs mix also the mixed native approach with the web view, I mean for mobile it's definitely faster to do just pure HTML, that's for sure. But for a big web app, that doesn't matter so much because browsers are fast, connections are fast nowadays, so it doesn't. For me, I would still go for the Ember apps, I think, or other frameworks, I would say. Thank you very much.